that designed the Union buildings in Pretoria, Rhodes University in Grahamstown in the Eastern Cape. This was mainly for male lepers. Female lepers church was on the northern part of the island, and it was demolished in 1931. Male and female lepers were separated because doctors feared that children will be born from leprosy might be affected by the disease. Coming up to your left is Medium Prison, building built during Second World War. It used to be the kitchen, but later converted to be the medium prison for criminals. Criminals and political prisoners were together in the maximum prison. But when they started smuggling information, prison authorities decided to separate them and they put criminals here. Political prisoners earlier were in the majority, highly educated, and even too smart to politicize those guys. So by the time other criminals left the prison, some of them were already politicians. We're entering the village, which is the only residential part of the island, with 130 to 150 people. They work for Robben Island Museum. Other people work for the service providers. Clinic is on your right, used by guards and their families. In prison, there is a hospital which was meant for prisoners, but the doctor used to go there once a week, more especially in the 60s. Sports facilities were made by prisoners, but used by guards and their families. Green building is the post office. This is here, where prisoners received mail, but letters for prisoners were taken to prison, and letters in prison were censored. A prisoner will only get a salutation and a conclusion. Content will be deleted, more especially if it was political. At first, guards used black cookies to delete letters, but prisoners devised a strategy of reading those letters under the sun or under the light. Guards could tell from their response. What then they decided to do was to take a pair of scissors and cut letters that were more political. Garrison Church on your right, built in 1841 by Captain Richard Wolfe, was the commandant of the island. This used to be Anglican Church, but now is interdenomination. There were 1,300 people who lived in this village during prison time, guards including their families. Coming up on your right, a building built in 1846. It used to be the hospital ward for chronic sick people. It was the library and the artillery school during Second World War. From 1967 to 2011, this operated as the primary school and accommodated children from grade 1 to grade 7. Kids then had to go to Cape Town to further their education. Are there any primary school kids in the bus? I'm going to ask your parents to leave you behind so that you can reopen the school. Red and white building on your left, built in 1895, used to be the commissioner's house. It was the superintendent's house during prison time. Is the conference center. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm about to give you a 10 minutes break off the bus. We are bus number 10. Please come back and get back to the same seats when you return. All right? And then I'm the only person with a whistle. I'll blow my whistle 3 times to attract you back to bus number 10. Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
Super. We finished now with the village part of the tour. Are we still together?
Yes.
Just enter the nature side. On this side you'll see animals, elephants, you'll see lions, giraffes, buffaloes. If you don't see them today, you can come back again tomorrow. Those are penguins' nest on the right hand side, ladies and gentlemen. Artificial penguins' nest. There are no penguins there right now. I'm told penguins don't like those structures. You'll find penguins sitting on the rocks over there on your left. But unfortunately, we are not allowed to go closer to the penguins. You can stand here or stand on the road over there. That icy cold water taken to the mainland, used as the fertilizer for the gardens. Place on the right hand side is Blowback Strand. It's the closest to the island with 7.5 kilometers. Escapes and attempts took place on this side. First person to escape was Oshumato. He was the Khoi leader. Khoi people were the indigenous people found at the Cape then. helping as the interpreter between Dutch and Khoi. Later, Oshumat was opposed to Dutch rule, and Jan van Riebeeck decided to arrest him. He became the first political prisoner to be arrested. Later, he got a chance, stole a rowing boat and escaped. His escape was successful, 1659, Oshumat. The second escape was made by Jan Reekman, who was the first person to swim across. He was in jail as well under the Dutch rule, and he got a chance to escape, and then he swam across. That was the first recorded swim from Robben Island, 1690, Jan Reekman. Ladies and gentlemen, it is possible to swim from Robben Island. It's not that I've tried it though. But there is a race that takes place annually, the Freedom Race in April. 7 years ago, it was joined by a 13-year-old girl from Jeffreys Bay. Her name is Apriela. She broke a record. She swam across 7.5 kilometers in 3 hours without a wetsuit. And that's what she does with her sister for charity, swim without a wetsuit, Apriela. On the left is our transport depot. All vehicles of the island are maintained here. We are on our way to the limestone quarry. Late Rolihlahla Mandela, late Walter Sisulu, the man who recruited Madiba in politics, late Robben Island, father to our former president, President Thabo Mbeki, late Andimba Toivo Jatoivo, who was the leader of SWAPO, late Ahmad Kathrada, he was in the same trial with Madiba. Those are Springboks. He was in the same trial with them. They were promised to work in the quarry for 6 months, but they ended working 13.5 years. Mining the limestone, a very soft stone to get, but what was hard for prisoners was to stand the brightness of the lime and the dust, which is the one that affected their eyes and their lungs. They were not given protective gear. God said it was not part of their uniform, and it affected them. Madiba 94 had to undergo an eye operation that was due to the lime dust and brightness. Not only him, all those labored there were affected. Limestone was used to construct the roads in Robben Island. So they mixed limestone with crushed seashells to surface the roads. Lime in the early centuries was used to whitewash the buildings on the mainland. Big cave down there might have been dug by slaves at the time, as there are only people who complained about Robben Island being cold around winter time. But during prison time, prisoners used it for many purposes. Lunchtime, those sit there and eat lunch. Food will be prepared in jail, so they brought food for prisoners. They used it as their toilet. They put buckets and relieve themselves. Prisoners were not allowed to leave the quarry. On top, there were guards watching. I think that was just to dehumanize them, because you can't sit and eat in the same space. Later they complained, and then a shed was built and placed next to the cave. They also used it as their classroom to educate themselves. Political and academic discussions took place here. Basic education was done by prisoners. Some couldn't even write their names, but there were those who were educated, were teaching those who were illiterate. So they used each and every opportunity they got to educate themselves. Books were smuggled, information and other material. Later, prisoners were fed up of smuggling things because they were punished. So they've decided to fight for their rights. They embarked on hunger strikes. Pressure from outside forced authorities to change conditions in prison. Later on, things changed. Now prisoners were allowed to study. So they made applications through University of South Africa and in other corresponding institutions. So that is how they obtained university degrees. On the entrance, there is pile of stones placed by former prisoners who gathered there for the reunion. In this quarry on that day, there was a breaking of rock ceremony, demonstration done by Madiba and other prisoners who labored here. After the ceremony, as they were leaving, he was leading, stood there where the pile of stones is, quiet for a moment, unplanned, pick up a stone, put it there, and then all those gathered there followed suit. They put those stones as the symbol of freedom for this country, symbol of hope and symbol of peace. And today, I'll say the pile of stones symbolizing the triumph of the human spirit of all odds. 11th of February is the date when Madiba was released in jail in 1990. It came 5 years after his release for the reunion. He was preaching peace and reconciliation. 11th of February is that date when he was released. But ladies and gentlemen, on that day, that's the day when ex-political prisoners took a final decision about Robben Island for it to be closed as the way of nation building. Yes, indeed, in December 96, Robben Island was closed completely. 1st January 97, it opened as the museum for us to be here today. Are there any questions? Yeah.
Does anyone live on the island today?
Yes, there is about 120 of them. They work for Robben Island Museum. Any other questions? Ladies and gentlemen, now we're going to the last stop, the house of the late Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe, who was the founder member of the Pan-Africanist Congress, PAC. In 1960, 20th March, he resigned as the lecturer of African Studies at the Witwatersrand University. He resigned and led the positive action campaign against passes. Passes in South Africa, we call it a dome pass. Dome means stupid. A booklet carried by black people. It worked in conjunction with the Group Areas Act. In fact, it was meant to control the influx of the people. Came from rural areas to the cities to seek for jobs. At the time, if police caught you without the document, you'll be fined. A fine equivalent to 3 months' wages. If you didn't have money, they'll put you in jail. So Robert Sobukwe and many South Africans were fighting against the Dome Pass. He marched to Orlando Police Station in Soweto in the similar setup in Sharpeville. Sharpeville, 69 defenseless people were killed, hundreds of them injured. That resulted to be the Sharpeville massacre. Ladies and gentlemen, there was a turnaround time in South Africa. First state of emergency was declared by the apartheid government. Over 18,000 people across the country were arrested. Robben Island opened its gates for the first time in the 60s for political imprisonment. Huge number of activists were then brought to Robben Island. All political organizations were banned. Later, apartheid was declared by the United Nations as the crime against humanity. Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe was amongst those arrested in Orlando, Soweto. He was taken to the fourth prison. They call it the native prison. That's where our constitutional court is today. He completed the balance of his sentence in Pretoria. And that's where he met Mandela. And they shared a son. But on the 23rd of April 1963, this is now 10 days before his official release date, an announcement was made in Parliament to detain Sobukwe even further. B.J. Foster was the Minister of Justice. Prime Minister of the country, Dr. Hendrik Verwoerd, decided on Robert Sobukwe's future. There was no law for them to do that. But in Parliament, they passed a special bill and they named it the Sobukwe Clause to keep him on this island under solitary confinement for the indefinite period. 3rd May 1963, Sobukwe was brought here and kept in that house on the left in isolation. Around this house for 6 years, there were 6 guards who were in patrol for 24 hours. First 4 years of the 6 years, they were not allowed to talk to him. He was not allowed to talk to them. That affected him psychologically. Later, he had a speech problem. The last 2 years, his late wife Veronica and the family could come and visit during school holidays. Late Helen Suzman, she was the member of parliament in the opposition. 1964, she started a Free Robert Sobukwe campaign in parliament. And for all the years she represented Sobukwe, she was ignored by parliament. Benjamin Pogrund was the journalist for the Rand Daily Mail could also visit. He wrote a book about Robert Sobukwe's house titled How Can a Man Die Better? The Story of Robert Sobukwe. These structures are all dog kennels, but they were built after Robert Sobukwe left Robben Island. He was extremely sick in 1969. Maybe they didn't want him to die on this island, and then he was transferred to Kimberley, and this site became a dog unit in 1974. In Kimberley, he was kept under house arrest in the township called Khalishiwe. Sobukwe died in Kimberley on the 27th of February 1978 due to lung cancer. Buried in Kharafreinet in the Eastern Cape, and that is where he was born. Born 5th December 1924. If he was still alive, he would be 100 this year. Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe, one of the greatest. Ladies and gentlemen, we're joining the world as we're fighting against apartheid that is taking place in Palestine. So today, we are saying free Palestine to everyone who's here destroying the fight. Thank you very much. This is the end of our tour. We are taking you now to the maximum security prison. After the prison tour, unfortunately, you will not be using this bus. You'll have to walk down to the harbor by yourselves, so we won't see you again. From my side, my colleague Annie, wish to thank you for being with us. Thank Annie as well for driving us safe. We wish you all a safe and a pleasant journey back to Cape Town and to your places. When you get back to your places, please tell other people that Robben Island is no longer a prison. It is now opened as the museum for the public. 1999, 2nd of December, it was declared as the World Heritage Site by UNESCO. And I believe all of us were saying whatever happened in South Africa must never, never happen again. That one person to be oppressed by another person. With all those words, thank you very much. And God bless you all. Thank you.